Welcome to our channel. Today, we are exploring a phenomenon that affects every single human being, yet remains one of the most misunderstood parts of our daily existence: sleep inertia. Why is it that some mornings we spring out of bed, while others feel like a heavy, impossible climb through thick fog?
Sleep inertia is technically defined as the transitional state between sleep and wakefulness, marked by impaired performance and a desire to return to sleep. It is not just laziness, it is a complex physiological process where the brain struggles to switch gears from slow-wave neural patterns to active, high-frequency consciousness.
It seems to get harder as we get older, doesn't it? I have noticed that people in their 50s and 60s often complain that the morning grogginess lingers much longer than it did in their 20s. Is there a biological reason why aging makes the transition into the days so much heavier?
Absolutely, Jane. To understand why, we first have to look at how we sleep. Our nights are divided into cycles, moving from light NREM sleep into deep, restorative NREM, and finally into REM sleep. Each stage has a specific signature, and waking up from the wrong stage can trigger severe inertia symptoms.
Let us break down those stages for a moment. Most people know about REM because of dreaming, but the NREM stages are where the heavy lifting happens. What occurs during stage 1 and stage 2 that sets the stage for how we eventually wake up in the morning hours?
In stage 1 NREM, your heartbeat and breathing slow down. It is a light transition. Stage 2 is more interesting because of sleep spindles, bursts of brain activity that help with memory consolidation. If you wake up here, you usually feel relatively alert because your brain is already showing signs of activity.
But then we hit stage 3, the deep sleep. This is often where the trouble starts if an alarm goes off unexpectedly. I have heard this called slow wave sleep. Why is this stage so restorative for the body, yet so difficult to wake up from when the sun rises?
Stage 3 is when the brain clears out metabolic waste. The glymphatic system opens up and cerebrospinal fluid flushes through the tissue. If you are ripped out of this stage, your brain is literally mid-wash. You feel disoriented because the blood flow hasn't yet returned to the prefrontal cortex adequately.
Then there is REM, or rapid eye movement. This is when our brains are almost as active as when we are awake, yet our bodies are paralyzed. It is a strange paradox. Does waking up during REM make the transition easier or harder compared to that deep, slow-wave sleep?
Waking from REM is actually easier than waking from stage 3 because the brain's metabolic rate is already high. However, as we age, the architecture of these cycles changes significantly. For those over 50, the percentage of time spent in deep, slow-wave sleep decreases, which sounds like it should help.
That is counterintuitive. If we spend less time in deep sleep as we age, why would we feel more groggy? You would think waking from lighter sleep would be a breeze. There must be another factor at play that makes the over 50 morning experience so much more difficult.
The secret lies in adenosine and circadian shifts. Adenosine is a chemical that builds up in your brain the longer you are awake, creating sleep pressure. During sleep, this chemical is cleared out. As we age, our brains become less efficient at clearing adenosine, meaning we wake up with a debt.
So it is like a filter that is getting clogged. If the adenosine is not fully cleared, we wake up with a lingering chemical signal telling our brain that it should still be asleep. Is this why that morning coffee feels so essential for older adults compared to younger people?
Exactly. Caffeine works by blocking those adenosine receptors. It doesn't actually give you energy, it just prevents your brain from feeling the sleep pressure. But for seniors, their circadian rhythm also shifts earlier, a phenomenon called phase advancement. They get tired earlier and wake up earlier, often before the sun.
Waking up before the sun seems like it would disrupt the natural hormonal triggers for alertness. We are supposed to use light to signal the brain to stop producing melatonin. If an older adult wakes at 4 a.m., they are essentially fighting their own internal chemistry, right?
Precisely. Melatonin is the hormone of darkness. If you wake up while your melatonin levels are still high, you will experience profound sleep inertia. In older adults, the off switch for melatonin is often delayed or less responsive to light, making the first hour of the day feel incredibly heavy.
Let us talk about the interaction between caffeine and melatonin. Many people reach for coffee the second they open their eyes. However, I have read that this might actually backfire if your timing is wrong.
How does caffeine influence the natural decline of melatonin in the morning?
If you drink caffeine too early, you might mask the adenosine, but you aren't helping the body clear it. Furthermore, high caffeine intake can interfere with the subsequent night's melatonin production. It creates a vicious cycle where each morning requires more stimulant to overcome the leftover residue from the previous day.
It sounds like a delicate chemical balancing act. We have adenosine building up and melatonin lingering, but there is also cortisol. We usually think of cortisol as the stress hormone, but it is actually vital for waking up. What happens to the cortisol awakening response as we get older?
The cortisol awakening response, or CAR, should be a sharp spike about 30 minutes after waking. It prepares the body for the day's demands. In many older adults, this spike is blunted. Instead of a sharp mountain peak, it is a flat hill, leading to a lack of morning motivation.
If our internal chemistry is working against us as we age, we need external solutions. Let us dive into the solutions you mentioned earlier. Light seems to be the most powerful tool. How exactly does light hit the brain to stop the sleep inertia process?
When light hits the melanopsin receptors in your eyes, it sends a direct signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, our master clock. This tells the brain to immediately inhibit melatonin and start warming up the body's core temperature. For older adults, bright morning light is the single best reset button.
Temperature is another fascinating factor. I know that our body temperature drops at night to help us sleep. Does it have to rise rapidly for us to wake up properly? And does aging affect our ability to regulate this internal thermostat in the morning?
Yes, a rising core temperature is a primary signal for wakefulness. Older adults often have poorer thermoregulation. Their bodies stay cooler for longer in the morning. Taking a warm shower or doing light movement can manually jumpstart this process, signaling to the brain that the sleep period is over.
What about hydration? We lose a lot of water through breathing and sweat while we sleep. Could the brain fog of sleep inertia actually just be mild dehydration, especially for seniors who might not feel thirst as intensely as younger people do?
Dehydration significantly exacerbates sleep inertia. Blood volume drops, meaning the heart has to work harder to get oxygen to the brain. For someone over 50, drinking 16 ounces of water immediately upon waking can improve cognitive function faster than caffeine because it restores that crucial blood flow balance.
So the protocol for an older adult struggling with inertia would be get light immediately, drink water, and maybe move the body. But what about the coffee delay you mentioned? When is the optimal time to have that first cup to avoid the mid-morning crash?
Ideally, wait 90 minutes. This allows your natural cortisol to peak and your body to clear out the remaining adenosine on its own. If you swoop in with caffeine too early, you disrupt the natural clearance, which leads to a massive crash at 2 p.m. when the caffeine wears off.
That is a tough sell for most people, but if it means avoiding that heavy feeling, it is worth a try. Let's look at the brain's cleaning system again. Is there anything we can do the night before to ensure we wake up with less adenosine?
Quality over quantity. Magnesium can help regulate the neurotransmitters that allow for deeper and REM sleep. For older adults, ensuring they don't eat too close to bedtime is also key. Digestion raises core temperature, which prevents the deep sleep needed to clear that adenosine residue effectively.
It seems like every choice we make in the evening dictates the struggle we face in the morning. For those over 50, the margin for error just gets smaller.
Their biology is less forgiving of a late-night snack or a dark bedroom in the morning.
That is a perfect way to put it. The resilience of the sleep-wake system declines. However, by using light and temperature strategically, we can compensate for these biological shifts. It is about working with the circadian rhythm rather than trying to force it to behave like a 20-year-old's.
We have covered a lot. The NREM and REM cycles, the clearing of adenosine, the role of cortisol, and the shift in circadian timing. It feels like sleep inertia is a signal from the body that it is not quite finished with its maintenance work.
Exactly. If you feel it, your brain is still in a sleep state. The prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and planning, is the last part to wake up. That is why you can't decide what to wear or feel irritated. Your emotional centers are awake, but your logic is still offline.
Is there a specific point of no return for sleep inertia? Some people feel it for 10 minutes, others for 4 hours. At what point should someone be concerned that their morning grogginess is actually a sign of a medical issue like sleep apnea?
If inertia lasts longer than an hour, despite light and water, it's time to see a specialist. Sleep apnea is incredibly common as we age and causes frequent micro-awakenings that prevent the clearance of adenosine. You might be asleep for 8 hours, but your brain never got its wash.
That makes sense. It is not just about the time spent in bed, but the continuity of those stages we discussed earlier. If you keep getting kicked out of stage 3, the adenosine just keeps piling up until it becomes a permanent fog.
Exactly. So for our listeners over 50, prioritize that morning light, hydrate before you caffeinate, and pay attention to how long the fog lasts. Your brain is a finely tuned machine, and as the parts get older, the startup sequence just requires a little more care.
It is empowering to know that we have some control over this. It is not just an inevitable part of aging that we have to suffer through. With the right adjustments, the second half of life can have just as much morning energy as the first.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science of waking up. By understanding your biological clocks and the chemistry of sleep, you can reclaim your mornings. Join us next week as we explore the secrets of longevity and neuroplasticity. Until then, stay curious and sleep well.